So, a lot of people think that the Raspberry Pi is just, a really cool little toy, I guess, to use. But recently, ever since the Raspberry Pi 4 came out, people have been saying this could be the next desktop replacement. So, can it really? Let's find out. Some people say it doesn't look like a powerful PC, but let's go ahead and get into the specs. Starting off, we have a quad-core Cortex A72 with an ARM version 8 processor, 64-bit SoC at 1.5 GHz. Raspberry Pis can actually be overclocked if they have a low heatsink on them. I don't, but I could probably find one somewhere. And yeah, it can be overclocked up to 2 GHz from what a lot of people have been getting, and really helps out the performance, brings like an extra 25% to the table. Our model also has 4 gigabytes of RAM, but they go up to 8 gigabytes of RAM if you want to do like more intense stuff. They also have a 1 gigabyte, a 2 gig, and I believe a 3 gig. So there's a bunch of different variables that you could get when it comes to the model that you choose. I chose a 4 gig because it was great, it was right in the mid-range price point, and it was only $60. It has 4 USB ports, 2 micro HDMI ports, which is kind of weird because when you have to buy like a special cable, it goes from like micro HDMI to like DVI, VGA, HDMI, depending on like your setup. Um, no real like monitors or displays really make typical micro HDMI ports, so I don't understand what the point of putting it on there was. Maybe it was a space restraint, but I still feel like there could have been other ways to get dual displays on here. They support up to 4K 60 FPS, and for the power source, it just takes a regular Type-C cable, and most people have a Type-C cable laying around. And one thing that is important for most home computers is built-in Wi-Fi on here. This chip right here where my finger is, I believe is the Wi-Fi chip, so your home computer is going to be able to have its built-in Wi-Fi and be placed anywhere in the house, so it's good for a home PC. Now this is supposed to compete with like the standard, older, maybe like i5 desktop computer, it's a quad core, that type of stuff. So in order to see if it can really compete against those things, we gotta see how it does. So it boosts off pretty fast, takes around 8 to 10 seconds to boot off the SD card. Speaking of that, I'd always recommend buying a class 10 micro SD card because anything below class 10 might give you like really low speed. Just a little saying, if you're going to buy a Raspberry Pi, just get a class 10 SD card. Don't get anything below, otherwise it can be a lot slower. And compared to old home computers that typically just use standard mechanical hard drives, definitely a lot faster when it comes to booting. Responsiveness is also pretty good. When you consider that it's off of an SD card, not a spinning hard drive, it's definitely a lot faster and a lot more responsive if you were, for say, trying to open up Chrome or something off of a hard drive compared to an SSD. I definitely recommend Class 10 because it's just a lot faster and overall definitely more responsive than a hard drive. So it's really responsive, and in its typical operating system, which is Raspbian, it's pretty fast. I say there's maybe like a 20% performance takeoff if you were to like try to switch to a different distro like Ubuntu or something. Now there are some things that are kind of locked down about it. It's mostly an architecture thing. The Raspberry Pi runs ARM64, so it's not like an actual x86 type processor. It's its own type of thing. So apps need to have their own different kind of support for this. So you can't install like regular apps like Chrome. You'd have to go with Chromium because Chromium has AMD or not AMD, ARM 64-bit support, but Chrome does not. They've never came out with the distro, so you gotta use Chromium. Audio is kind of weird. Like audio works, but it doesn't. It's kind of like staticky. It's just like weird to listen to. Maybe it's because it's through the HDMI speakers. It's better if you have like an actual headset that you can attach to it. It works better. It's more reliable. But anything like Bluetooth headsets are also kind of finicky to get connected. So it just depends on your audio setup. So stuff like Zoom and Chrome, like those are things that most home users also use. You get your personal files to upload your pictures and stuff to your computer. And as long as stuff like Netflix or YouTube works on occasion, most home users are probably fine, and the Raspberry Pi can definitely handle that. But I'd also recommend staying in like 720 to 1080p range because if you're going to stay in that range, then things will work fine. But as it has been stated they support up to 4K 60, and I don't think the Raspberry Pi is ready for 4K 60 yet, but 1080p and 720p is going to work fine. It's going to be great. So I really want to compare this to like a real home PC, and I don't personally have any like home PCs. As you can see, this is a Ryzen gaming PC. Um, it has Ryzen in it. It's honestly going to be better than any home computer. But I did end up spending $60 on a home computer. It's an older Dell with like an i5 2400, 4 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gigabyte hard drive. So we're going to go ahead and compare the two. And when it comes to comparing, let's kind of compare specs. On paper, they sound pretty equal. They both have quad-core CPUs, 4 gigabytes of RAM, an SD card on the Raspberry Pi, which is seemingly faster than a hard drive. But I will say that the more capacity you want on an SD card, the more expensive it gets. We only have a 64 gig micro SD card, while the PC has 500 gigabyte hard drive, which is technically cheaper to produce. So I guess it kind of wins in like capacity area, but in all the other places it seems to kind of be losing on paper, or maybe even equal to. The DDR memory on the home computer is DDR3, while the Raspberry Pi runs DDR4. So technically the Raspberry Pi should have faster RAM and a faster response rate, lower latency. As I said earlier, the Raspberry Pi takes around maybe 9 to 10 seconds booting up, while the Dell home computer I tested, it takes a whole minute and 53 seconds to get to the home window screen. So definitely Raspberry Pi winning on that one. And overall responsiveness when it comes to the home computer is really slow. Clicking Chrome, that takes like 20 seconds to actually load in. But performance, on the other hand, is okay. Running things like YouTube at any quality really is fine. The Raspberry Pi can only really stay at like 1080p if it wants to realistically have a chance against this computer. But when it comes to other things, like just being fast and reliable, the Raspberry Pi is definitely where it's at. So small, it's really light, and you only need to like put a keyboard and mouse on here and then call it a day and you're done. So other than responsiveness, gaming wise, it's kind of weird. Raspberry Pis, they don't really support that many games, but for like average home user stuff, like let's say Minecraft, it's fine. It obviously, it's hard to run. It's kind of intense, and you're only going to get around like 50, 55 FPS in something like Minecraft, with the resolution all the way down, might I add. But it does work. It does run on here. So if you just like want a regular home thing, you're not going to be able to do like intense gaming, but that's not why you're buying one. So you're buying this for like a home perspective. Or at least that's what this video is trying to cover. If you guys would like me to cover something gaming related, go ahead and leave a comment. But so far, we're sticking to home user stuff. And, light gaming, like Minecraft, and definitely like emulated games, like older games, PS2 games, that would run well on the Raspberry Pi. But anything intense, like you're not going to be able to run Fortnite or anything like that. And you might be able to get away with using like GeForce Now or something like that. My tests have shown that it's okay, but it depends on the distro you use. Raspbian will not work. Android on here, you can kind of do GeForce Now, you can kind of game on it, so that's okay. But when it comes to gaming stuff, it's just not really reliable. It's not going to work. Occasional video editing might work on here, and basic home user stuff. If you're a home user, you're set. This is going to be your thing. It will work for you. But anything like intense, the Raspberry Pi is not ready for yet, and it's not going to be ready for multiple, like a while. But when it comes to like getting the entry space and getting into people's like home setup, this actually will have a chance. It does perform exceptionally well for a home computer. So I definitely would recommend this if you only had like 60 bucks or whatever to spend on a computer. Only thing you might really need to buy extra is an SD card and then like a micro HDMI adapter. But other than that, it's really inexpensive, it's powerful, it's fast, it's reliable. I think if I were in the situation where I needed a home computer, I might just go for the Raspberry Pi. So with that being said, guys, if you guys did enjoy the video, go ahead, hit the like button and subscribe if you guys want to see more Raspberry Pi related content on the channel. I have a lot of plans for this little toy right here, and yeah, hopefully we can do some more with it. thanks for watching. This is Texting. We just hit 200 subs, so hey, that's pretty cool. And yeah, thanks for watching.